guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's case, I will be covering a story that was suggested by a subscriber here on this channel. Now, what's interesting about this case is that I think this lady appeared on a series called Deadly Women. I'm not sure if this is a universal show or if not, but anyways, a story did appear on Deadly Women, so I have heard of this one before and it is very interesting. So I'm excited to cover it today. But before we do get into today's case, please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe and hit that bell notification button to get notified of any new uploads of mine. So without further ado, let's just get straight into today's case. Mary Ann was born on 31st of October 1832 at Low Morsley, County Durham, to Margaret Lonsdale and Michael Robson, a colliery sinker, and baptised at St Mary's, West Rainton on 11th of November. Her sister Margaret was born in 1834 but lived only a few months. Her brother Robert was born in 1835. When Mary Ann was 8, her parents moved the family to County Durham village of Merton. At the time of 1852, 20-year-old Mary Ann, married Gallery Labora William Mowbray at Newcastle upon Tyne Register Office. They soon moved to South West England. At the time of her trial, they bore reports of 4 or 5 she complained that the last surviving cotton boy, Charles Edward, was in the way and asked Riley if he could be committed to the workhouse. Riley, who also served as West Auckland's assistant coroner, said she needed to accompany him. She told Riley that the boy was sickly and added, "I won't be troubled long, he'll go sponge.